In today's video, I'm going to show you how I painted this snake illustration in the app Procreate using digital watercolor. This is something that's a little bit different from what I usually make, but because it is the year of the snake, I wanted to try making a snake. I'm going to guide you through every single step, and if this is something that piques your interest, please keep on watching. Hello and welcome to Color with Kendi. On this channel, we paint digital watercolor and gouache on the iPad in the app Procreate. If you're interested in following along with the same supplies as me, you can find a list in the description as well as a pinned comment. Let's begin. The first thing I'm going to do is open up the canvas that I'm using today. It has a slight texture, not too much. And what I'm going to do is insert the traceable and the color palette as well as the rough color map. So I'm just going to go to the layers panel. I'm going to turn this layer off. I'm going to tap right up at the top, and then I'm going to import everything. And to import images, all you have to do is tap on the wrench icon, go to your actions menu, tap on add, and then insert a photo or a file. Okay, so I've inserted all of the files. So if I go to the layers panel, I have the rough color map, which you can refer to as a guide for where the colors need to go. And then there is the traceable as well as the color palette. So for the traceable, I'm just going to tap on it, and then I'm going to tap on N to open up the opacity slider. And I'm just going to reduce the opacity to about 10%. That's usually what I do. So that way I can refer to it, actually maybe a little bit more than 10% today, maybe 12%. I think it's easier to see that way. So the first thing is to paint in the snake. So to paint in the snake, we have two different options. One is to paint it directly with a watercolor brush and then smudge out any overlaps as we complete the shape. But because the shape is pretty big and it's got a lot of curves, I think it's far easier to use the shape maker method, which is to create a shape, make it white, and then apply watercolor effects. So that's what we're going to do first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the brush library and I'm going to select brush number 27 from the brush pack I'm using today. So let me just show you how that works. So if I apply light pressure, you get something like that. If I apply heavy pressure, something like that. So it has a little bit of an edge, watercolor edge, where it's not completely perfect. So I'm just going to go into size 7. I think that might be easier for me. And then just paint in the shape of the snake. And then just fill that in, drag and drop. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start adding the watercolor effects to this. Now in order to add the watercolor effects, I need to make this white first. If I add watercolor effects to this, it can still work, but it won't have that luminosity that watercolor has. So what I'm going to do is just go to the adjustments panel, tap on hue, saturation, and brightness, and then I'm going to go to the brightness slider and slide it all the way to max. So now it looks like the snake is gone, but it's actually there, it's right there. And I'm going to bring back the traceable, and then I'm going to tap on plus, and what we're going to do is we're going to paint in the effects, the watercolor effects, in a clipping mask, so that whatever I paint in layer 15 here is only going to show up on the snake underneath. So to make this a clipping mask, just make sure it's blue, tap on it, and then tap on the words clipping mask. Changing the color, I'm going to go to brush number 30. I'm going to go all the way up to size 100. I'm going to zoom out. And then with one motion, without lifting my pencil, I'm just going to paint in the snake like that. So as you can see, there is some color variation here, but there's not a lot. We can start adding more. So I'm going to go to the layers panel and tap on plus again and make this a clipping mask. And this is where I'm going to continue to add more pigment. So there are a bunch of different brushes I like to do this with. So I'm going to start with brush number 36, which is going to add a little bit of a grainy pigment. And I'm going to change the color ever so slightly. So I'm going to go to the colors menu. And where I have this color, I'm just going to go down a diagonal. So it's a little bit darker, not too much. And I'm going to go up in size to size 100. And without lifting my pencil, I'm just going to apply some of that grainy pigment. Now, this is a little bit too much. So what I'm going to do is just reduce the opacity. So I'm going to go to layers panel, tap on N, and then reduce the opacity to about 40%. So now, as you can see, it has a little bit of this interesting texture. Let me just turn off the traceable for a moment, but it's not too much. So I'm just going to tap on plus and again, clipping mask. And for the next step, I'm going to choose a slightly darker color. I'm going to go up here and pick this color right here, grab and hold it by pressing and holding. And then I'm going to open the brush library and go to brush number 34. And with this brush, what I'm going to do is just, I'm going to go up in size actually, size 65. And I'm going to start off with light pressure, like that, on the edges. And then make it a little heavier in parts. And then what happens is it looks like that. And then while keeping my pencil on the screen, I can erase away a little bit of that. So basically, you keep your pencil on the screen and just vary the pressure. So I'm happy with that. There are some areas where it's a bit softer, some areas where it's a little bit more pigmented. And if you want to smudge a few areas out, you can. Just go to the smudge tool and go to smudger number 6. So for example, if I wanted to just gently smudge out this area right here, I can just tap and gently smudge inwards. And then the next step is I'm going to add another clipping mask and we will add a little bit of color variation. So if you're happy with just having it in a single color, mainly red, that's fine. I do want to add a hint of another color. So I'm just going to grab this color right here and I'm going to use a different brush for this. I'm going to use brush number 32 and I am probably going to go down in size to size 40. And then just tap on certain areas, maybe a little bit smaller, size 15. So I'm just tapping below the head and some areas here. I'm just going to add a hint of color variation to this. Now you could stop here or you could keep going and add more pigment and more effects. What I do want to do is just add a little hint of a shadow on one side of the snake, but I don't want to do it with any of the softer brushes. I want to do it with a more defined brush. So I'm just going to tap on plus and again do this in a clipping mask so everything stays contained to the shape of the snake. And I'm going to go back to this color right here. And then I am going to use, let's see, I'm going to use brush number 11. Dark outline B. So I wanted to have a little bit of a dry look as though I've painted on some pigment that is not wet on wet, but wet on dry, and then it's dried. So I'm using size 20, so let me just show you what that would look like. So it would look a little bit like this. So do you see, it has a little bit of that bumpy edge, which I like, but it adds a little bit of definition. So just add it where you would think that there would be a little bit of a shadow. Okay, so I think that looks good. You can add more shadow and more details if you'd like. But now I'm going to move on to the face of the snake. So I'm just going to do that in a different layer. And for this, I'm going to go with something that's relatively dark, but not completely black. I feel like if I use black, it's going to look a little too harsh. And then I'm going to go in with a detail brush because I want the details to be crisp. So I'm going to use brush number 37 for the face. So let's see, we have the little nose. I have a little smile because, hey, gotta make it look cute. And then we've got the eye. Now the next step is to start adding in the white details on the snake. So I'm going to do this in a different layer just in case I decide to change the color. And now what I'm going to do is go to the colors menu and I'm going to double tap close to the 10 to 30 position to snap to pure white. I want this to be pure white. So with the same brush, brush number 37, I'm going to start to paint in those details that you see here. And this brush is slightly transparent, so you will see a little bit of an overlap. And then what I'm going to do is remove the traceable and let's have a look. I think this looks really nice, but I'm finding that the embellishment isn't popping enough for me. And that's because our snake is quite pale too. So what we can do is go to the layers panel and where we have our embellishment, we can just go to that layer, make sure it's selected and then swipe to the left and duplicate it. And now it's popping a lot more. And what you can do if you'd like is add a little bit more color to the snake too. So I'm also going to do that. So I'm going to go to So we had the layer where we had a little bit of that shadow. So just below that shadow layer, I'm just going to tap to the layer below, tap on plus, and I'm going to add a little bit more color to the snake because it is a bit pale. So I'm going to grab this color right here, and then I'm going to go back to brush 34, go up in size to size 100, and just in the center of the snake, I'm going to lightly add a little bit more color. And once you're done, we are now ready to move on to the next step. So let's go to the layers panel and bring back the traceable, and now we're ready to paint in the gold embellishments. That is probably the most fun part for me. So for the gold, I'm going to select this color right here. I'm going to press and hold on it, and you can use any gold textures that you have. I'm using one from my Amazing Papers brush pack. I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom. We have a few different foil textures. So I'm going to use texture C, which is brush number 40. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to do this in a different layer, not in that layer, it wouldn't have worked in that layer. So I'm just going to go to, I think layer 18, I didn't have anything here, yeah. So in this layer, what I'm going to do is just go all the way to size 100 and lay down that foil. And I want this foil to be a little bit darker, so what I'm going to do is rotate it and then apply it again. This way it becomes a little bit darker. And now the foil is ready, and now we can paint in our botanical elements and apply the foil in a clipping mask. That's usually how I like to use foil, is to apply it in a clipping mask. So what I'm going to do now is just tap on the layer below it, tap on plus, and it will create a new layer right below the foil. Then you want to go to the foil layer, tap on it, make it blue, and make it a clipping mask. So now you can't see the foil layer, but it is there. And now anything I put in the layer below the foil is going to have the foil on top of it because the foil is in a clipping mask. So I am going to do this with white. So I'm going to double tap at the 10, 10, 30 position to get to pure white. And I will go back to the Amazing Watercolor brush pack, and I'm going to use brush 37 again, but you can also use brush 43 to make all of these elements. Actually, you know what? Maybe to change things up, I'll use brush 43. So this one has a much more defined edge. And the reason why I'm painting in white is that it shows up a lot better because the gold texture is slightly transparent. So let me just show you. So do you see? Now, anything I make in this layer, right here, this botanical shapes layer, will have gold foil applied to it. So now we can start to paint in the foil. It's really that simple. So let's go ahead and paint in the foil. And I'm finding that the traceable is a little bit too apparent. So I'm going to go back to the traceable, tap on N, reduce the opacity a little bit. There we go. And the final thing I wanted to do was to make some of the edges of the snake a little bit more wet looking. So let's try this out. So let's go to the snake layer that we have, that paint here layer that we had where we have the snake. And I'm going to go to the smudge tool, and I have smudger number 6. And let's go to size 15. And let's just have a look. If I were to smudge out, oh, that's too much. Smudge it, just tap, gently tap, smudge out certain areas of the snake. I think that might be too big, so I'm gonna go in with size 5. Just want to have some of the snake shape a little bit smudgy. Do you see? Just a little bit. So yeah, now I can say I am done. I am done. So let's have a look at what we made together. So we have the gold foil with a subtle red tinge, and then we have the snake and the embellishment on top of the snake, and we use different brushes to create that interesting watercolor effect. And then we have the snake smile, kind of cute. And yeah, that is it. I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something new and you enjoyed painting something different. I've never painted a snake in my life. This was the first time I've done it. And I think it turned out really well. It's nice, it's cute, it's pretty, and it's simple. So yeah, that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye!